All right. All right. So for the past 2 days, we've been working on orders of operation and your operation rules. We are going to apply the skills you just learned to solving algebraic expressions. But there's one more step you need to learn before we dive into solving algebraic expressions. And that step would be how to combine like terms. Okay, so this is what you see right in front of you on your worksheet. These are the notes. Okay, so you'll see step one. So when you're thinking about combined and like terms, so I know this looks like a huge, I'm going to actually make it bigger for you guys. This looks like a lot of things going on, right? So we learned the last 2 days, a term is separated by an operation, right? And an operation, the signs are any plus, minus, right? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division sign, right? So terms are separated by operations, okay? So I'm going to circle all the operations you see, and then I'm going to underline all your different terms. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this looks very complicated because there's so many terms, okay? So when you're trying to solve an algebraic equation, first step always is to combine those like terms. Okay, so if you look at your worksheet, what does it say? Okay, step one is to separate the terms that have a variable and the terms that don't have a variable, which are called constants. If it's just a number and there's no variable attached to it, a variable is a letter. So this would be considered a constant because you see there's no variable attached to it, okay? So I'm going to separate the terms that have a variable and the terms that don't have a variable, okay? So I'm going to say 2x. I skipped the 3 because there is no variable, okay? I'm going to say plus 3x because there's a variable in that one. I'm skipping that 2 because there's no variable. Y is a variable, it's strictly a letter. So I'm going to say plus y. And then this last term says says 4x squared, so that also has a variable. Okay. Then over here, I'm going to write my terms that are just the constants, right? So I have a 3. I have a positive 2, so 3 plus 2. Okay, and that's it. So now you see everything that's here is over here. Okay, step 2, we'll get to that. We still didn't finish this step. So now you got to look at your variables and you have to divide again. Okay, so you got to separate the variables that have the same letter. So I have x's and I have a y. Okay, so this x, and I see an x. I'm going to put the y somewhere else. It's not a like term because it's a different letter. Okay, so now I'm going to separate again, and I'm going to say 2x plus 3x plus 4x squared. Okay, Then you just have your y by itself, okay? And then you have your 3 plus 2, okay? Now, we're on to the next step. So it says separate the variable terms which have exponents to different powers. Okay, so I'm good here. I know they're all the same variable. However, I'm not okay. They're not the same like term if they're not to the same power. So this one, remember, if there's nothing at the top, if there's no exponent, that means it's to the first power. So this one's to the first power. This one's to the first power. So these two are like terms. But this one has a 2 at the top. So it's not a like term. Okay? So now I have to separate again, and I'm going to say 2x plus 3x. Have that line. I'll make the line red. Okay, so they're like terms. Okay, now we know 4x squared is not a like term. So I'm going to put that separate. 4x squared. Have that line. Y is not a like term, so I put that separate. 3 plus 2 is not a like term, so I'm going to put that separate as well. So now I have separated successfully all of my terms that are different, and I've put together successfully all of my like terms. So looking up here, out of your 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, out of your 6 different terms, the only terms that are like terms, okay, are your 2x plus 3x, they go together, and your 3 plus 2, they go together. So you can simplify by combining these like terms and these like terms. Okay? The other ones are not like terms. You can't combine them with anything. Okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is combine my like terms to make it easier. So 2 plus 3 is 5. So if I have 2 x's and I add another 3 x's, I now have 5 x's. So I have 5x okay? That says 4x squared, and it's positive. There's no negative, so you're going to say plus 4x squared. That's a positive y, so again, you're going to say plus y. And now you combine these like terms. You're going to say 3 plus 2 is 5, plus 5. So now you have successfully combined all of your like terms, and you have successfully simplified this above equation. Last step in your notes, you see, you have to put it in proper form. Proper form is your variables always come in the front of your equation, your constant is last. So then you may ask me and say, Miss Fisher, okay, so how do I know which variable goes first? Because I have 1, 2, 3 different variable terms. So how, and then you just told me, Miss Fisher, I can't combine those 3 different variable terms. So which one goes first? So the rule states the variable term to the highest degree, the highest power, goes first. Okay? So we see the only one to a power greater than 1 is right here, the squared. So you know for a fact 4x squared goes first. Okay? Since there's another x term, that term would follow it. So you would say plus 5x. Again, variables always come first. Your constant, which is just your number, is last. So now I'm going to say plus y. And then you put your constant last, plus 5. Final answer. So when everything's said and done, this becomes this when you combine your like terms. Okay? Don't worry, we're gonna go through this. So I'm gonna give you a second to copy that down. Well, I guess since there's 2 of you in class today, I don't need my face shield on today. Okay. So our guided practice, and after we do our guided practice, I'm going to give you a lot of different examples that we're going to do together, because this can be confusing. Okay. So I see x to the 4th power, x to the 5th power, x, y, and 3. Okay? The first thing I always do is separate the terms with my variables, right? And my constants, because the constants always go last. Now that you understand that step, if you want to, you can combine this step into it and say, okay, if it's a different letter, I'm going to also separate. So I'm going to put my x's together, and if there was multiple y's, I'm going to put my y's together. So you can separate that as well. All right? So I'm going to say I have x to the 4th plus x to the 5th. Okay? So I got rid of this one, I got rid of this one. 3 doesn't have an x, so nope. Y isn't an x, so nope. Plus x. Okay. Got rid of that one. Line. Now I see my y. Okay. I see it's a plus y, so I'm just going to bring down the plus y for you guys. Plus y. Remember, you always do your variables first. Okay? So now I just got rid of my y. Boom. Okay? The only thing that's left now is my constant, which is my 3. Remember, a constant's strictly a number. So now I'm going to say plus 3, because that says plus 3. Plus 3. Okay? Next step. Now I have to look at this and say, okay, yeah, they're all x's, but are they like terms? They are only like terms if they are to the same power. None of them are to the same power. I have x to the fourth, I have x to the fifth, and I have x to the first. So I cannot combine any of them. None of them can go together. They stay separated, just as they are. None of them get combined, right? So now that we see I can't combine any of these terms, now I have to put it in the proper order, okay? Proper order states, again, we've already set it up good, right? Because we know our variables go first, our constant goes last. Proper order states your variables go first, your constant goes last, and then the variables to the highest power go first. So I see I have a 4, a 5, and a 1. So the x to the fifth goes first. So I'm going to say x to the fifth plus x to the fourth plus x. Then I just keep following down. It says plus y, because all your variables come first, and then your constants last, plus 3. Final answer. Okay. So remember, when you're doing your final answer, step 1 for final answer, step 1, variables first, constant is last. Okay. Step 2, variable to highest power goes further left, goes farthest left, goes first, goes farthest left, farthest left, slash first. Okay? It goes in descendant order. I have 5, 4, 1, descendant order. Again, you keep all of your same letters together. So how I determine x came before y is because these are all x's. So I'm going to put this x before y because I say x to fifth plus x to fourth plus x because they're all x's. Then I do the y. Okay. Give me a second, copy that down. We don't even have Miss Sodana in class today. It's a really small class. Okay, so let me erase that. We'll get to another one. Okay, so for this one, we have, this one's easier because we remember, first step is you separate your variables and then you separate your constant, okay? Constants are just numbers. There's no letter attached to it. Remember, variable equals letter. And it could be any letter of the alphabet, any letter, okay? So step one, separate variables. Separate, step number one, separate variable terms, I should say variable terms from constant terms. Please remember again, a term is separated by an operation sign. So if I was to ask you, how many terms are up here in this algebraic expression, you would say, Miss Fisher, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms. I have 5 terms. Okay? Terms are separated by operation signs. Operation signs are your plus sign, your minus sign, your multiplication sign, and your division sign. Okay? So we have 5 terms up here. Just want to erase this so we don't get confused. So we're going back now. So what I said earlier, step 1, separate variable terms from your constant terms. Okay? Now that we understand the variable terms that are to the highest degree, the highest power, okay, go first, I'm going to naturally separate that way, okay? So I'm going to say b squared, okay, and I'm going to cross it off. All right, and then I'm going to say plus 2b plus b, so cross off the 2b, cross off the b. Negative 3 and negative 2 do not have a letter attached to it, so they do not go with my variable terms. So now I'm going to have that big line that I've been putting up to show that they're different. And then I'm going to say minus, negative, so we have the negative 3 minus 2. Okay, so now I took care of every term you see up there. I know I'm okay. All right. Now this one might be a little confusing for you because we haven't had one with a coefficient in front of it yet. A coefficient simply is, so 2b, a number in front of a variable is called a coefficient. Okay? A number in front of a variable is called a coefficient. What does that coefficient tell you? It simply tells me I have two b's. The b is still to the first power, okay? So this is the same thing as saying b plus b. This coefficient is telling me how many b's I have, okay? How many b's I have. So now that I explain that, hopefully you should understand that these two are indeed like terms that you can combine. Because this b is, there's nothing up at the top, which means it's to the first power. It's understood it's to the first power. There's nothing up here. There's no exponent, so that means it's understood it's to the first power. Okay, remember this coefficient means there are two b's. If there's no coefficient in front of a letter, that means it's the same thing as if I simply wrote this invisible 1 in front of it, right? Because if there's no coefficient in front of it, I know that simply means that's 1b. Okay, so now I'm saying 2 plus 1 is 3b. So I have 3b to the first power. All right? So I have b squared plus 3b to the first power. These, again, you know, are like terms because they're just numbers. You can always combine your numbers. So remember, a negative and a negative will always give you a negative. So if I have negative 3 minus another 2, that gives me a negative 5. That was part of our operation rules that we just learned the other day. So when I combine these, I have a negative 5. Again, for any test, anything, you always get to use your calculator. So if you can't memorize those operation rules, that's fine. You would simply plug that into your calculator and you would find it's a negative 5. Okay, so now we double check for our final step, and we simply make sure that that 1, all of our variables are coming first. Okay, the constant is last. 2, the variable to the highest degree or power is first, and then the rest falls in place. Okay, so I have b squared, that's to the highest power, plus 3b to the first, minus 5, and you don't even have to write to the first because it's just 3b. Final answer. Okay. How are we doing? What are we thinking? My two friends that are in class today. Okay, so let's look at the next one. This will probably be all we have time for. Okay. which is fine. We'll go into this next week as well. So remember, step 1, we separate our variable terms. They come first. Our constant terms go last, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. These are my variable terms. Since you know the variable term to the highest degree comes first, you can start off in step 1 with putting the 1 to the highest degree first. So I have positive 2a cubed. So I'm going to put 2a cubed. Then I can say plus 2a minus 5a. Okay? They're all my variable terms. Separate it. Minus 5. Okay? Again, this is a 3 coefficient. If there's nothing up there, this is to the first power, this is to the first power. I can't combine the 2a cubed. It's not a like term. But I can combine these two because they're both to the first power, which means they're like terms. Okay? It's very important, again, for you to understand this is a coefficient. This is a coefficient, and a coefficient tells you how many a's you have. Okay? So this one's telling me I have 2 a's. This one's telling me you need to subtract 5 a's, right? This is telling me I have a positive 2a, and I'm subtracting 5 a's. Okay? So now I need to think 2 minus 5. Okay, 2 and subtract 5 from it is going to give me, again, you would simply put that in your calculator, 2 minus 5. You can't put a letter in the calculator. So when you have your algebraic expressions, you wouldn't say 2a minus 5a in your calculator. You would just simply say 2 minus 5, right? That would give you the negative 3, and then you know you have to add the a to that back of it, right? So now I have the negative 3a. I put the 2a cubed in front of it. And then I know I have minus 5. Final answer. Okay. And that's all we have time for today. We ran out of time. So Monday we'll continue with this. We have a worksheet. We'll work through some problems. Okay, you guys can pack up.